Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. It's David Hodge. Welcome. All right, brothers and sisters. As you know, we're heading to the time of unprecedented trouble, a time like no other, and never will there be. A time of intense darkness, brothers and sisters. And life as you know it will not be the same after this event in the Middle East with Michaels and his angels versus the dragon and his angels kick off. When this war happens, it will change your life drastically. Things that you're doing day to day will no longer be reality. Things that you're used to will no longer be the norm. They are about to initiate an attack on us, brothers and sisters. It's about to get really dark. And we're here to give you the information to be successful during this time, brothers and sisters. And we are reflecting the light that will give you the ability to see during this time of intense darkness. And this is the only light there will be. And this light is for you, brothers and sisters, so we can make our exit out of America, because that will be our best option, brothers and sisters. Because what's about to take place here, you don't want any parts of what's about to take place here, brothers and sisters. All right, let's get into what's taking place in the Middle East. Now, I know that everybody wants this war to go away. They want this thing just to disappear so they can go back to their normal lives. So I have to keep panicking and worrying that they got to stock up on food, and they got to make plans to invest in this, invest in that. People buying bunkers, and like I said, trying to prepare for what some say the end of the world, right? But that's their interpretation of what they believe. It's not the end of the world, brothers and sisters. It's the end of America. And it's the beginning of our reality, the black men and women of America. Our reality is coming in America. The American dream is shutting down. So, however, everybody wants peace. But we know how it's going to go. It's not going to be in peace. The current ceasefire is under pressure. Major pressure, brothers and sisters. It's weak. It's fragile. The ceasefire between Iran and false Israel and the United States is heavy. It's being tested It's going to fail. Iran accuses the United States of violating this agreement, this ceasefire, this truce, after new strikes in southern Iran. The U.S., they claim that the strikes were defensive actions near the Strait of Hormuz. And there's still heavy fighting in Lebanon. False Israel launched one of its heaviest bombing campaigns in Lebanon in weeks. Lebanese officials say at least 31 people were killed in the latest strikes. Hezbollah has responded with rockets and drone attacks against Israeli forces. So as you see, the ongoing tension is not letting up, even with this truce, a so-called ceasefire, is the diplomacy, excuse me, brothers and sisters, that's in progress. All right. In the Strait of Hormuz, tensions are still critical. It remains one of the biggest global concerns, with oil markets remaining unstable as traders watch for progress in this negotiation, which we know is going to fail. They claim that some tanker traffic has resumed, but military risk remain high. And it's only going to get worse. President Trump, he held a meeting focused on ending this war and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. We know that he's dreaming. That's what the American dream is about. Hoping and wishing and praying, which we know that wishing and praying and all those things don't work. We know that all things will fail. Say that everything that they would do and say they would inherit. So everything's gonna backfire on them, brothers and sisters. Talking tough, claiming they're gonna do this, do that, blow up this, blow up that, destroy this, destroy that. They're gonna end whole civilizations, and the stuff that they have done. They'll inherit all these things, brothers and sisters. So you want to end the war, but they're still participating in havoc. And you want to make things, you want negotiation to go your way. They want sanctions relief, right? Iran's nuclear program, right? Regional security agreements, future shipping access through the Strait of Hormuz. You see, they want stuff to go their way, but we know it's going to fail. Iran issues warnings. Their supreme leader warned the U.S. that they have no safe place if these attacks continue. So they're not playing around. They're letting you know up front it's going to go down. They're not in the business of making peace anyway. These are strategic plans that they have set in place to defeat their enemies. However, the regional tensions remain extremely high despite the ongoing agreements. Civilian casualties continue rising across Lebanon and surrounding areas. Displacement in humanitarian and Mediterranean, concerns are worsening. The region remains extremely unstable. Peace is what they want, but they have all this stuff going on, all this tension, all this conflict, which could escalate very quickly in this ceasefire collapse. And that's what people don't want. They want things to go back to normal. But as we explained, there is no going back to normal. That's over with. We know exactly how this thing is about to play out. So no matter what they're saying and the progress of what they think that they're coming up with and all these things, we know the truth. As I was explaining, your life's about to change forever after this war with Michaels and his angels versus the dragon and his angels. That when that kick off, game over. Because Michaels and his angels will be victorious, and the dragon and his angels will be defeated. And who is Michael and his angels? Michael and his angels. Michael is Master Farad Muhammad, the god of this time, and his angels is Iran and Syria. And there'll be versus the dragon and his angel. Who's the dragon? The House of Saad, the false apostles, those claiming to be Sunni Arabs, but they're Hindu. They were put in that place to ensure American Britain with cheap oil. They're not who they claim to be as well. They're false, along with their angels. American Britain and false Israel, another false opponent. Their allies. So these are the key players. And it says that, like I explained, Michaels and the angels will be victorious. There'll be a authority and power switch in the Middle East once they're defeated. And how do we know this? Because the angel tells us. It tells you in Revelations chapters 12. It says, and not. It proved strong. Not but place was found of them yet in the heaven, and was thrown the dragon, the great, the serpent, the archaic, the being called devil, and the Satan, the making to air, the being inhabited whole. He was thrown into the earth, and the angels of him with him were thrown. So that's simple. It's telling you exactly that they were defeated, that they were thrown out, that they were they was thrown to the earth. And he was kicked out. American Britain was kicked out of the Middle East. The dragon was kicked out, defeated and kicked out, leaving false Israel to be isolated for their destruction. And while everybody thinks there's about to be peace, there's not going to be any peace, brothers and sisters. There's not.
And U.S. forces launching self-defense strikes, hitting boats and missile sites in southern Iran as President Trump presses forward with diplomatic efforts for lasting peace in the region. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino.
Good weekend?
Oh, good. How about those Knicks?
Are you dry yet? Because
yes.
That was a doozy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Hope you all had a wonderful Memorial weekend. Let's get back to it now. CENTCOM taking defensive action to protect American troops amid a fragile ceasefire, while negotiators appear to be moving closer to finalizing some sort of peace agreement.
Maybe. And Republican Senator Dave McCormick telling us last hour that Iran can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon.
I think the president's been very clear on this. Secretary Rubio is very clear on this. And the Iranians have a choice. They can choose a path to prosperity for the Persian people, one of the great civilizations that's been run by radicals for 50 years, or we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and put additional pressure with military force, but they can't have a path to a nuclear weapon, period.
Foreign correspondent Jeff Paul is live in Dubai with more. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Dana. Well, yeah, leaders here in the Gulf are still hopeful and trying to actively work to get that U.S.-Iran peace deal across the line. We know a delegation from Tehran recently traveled to Qatar to continue diplomatic efforts there, but complicating this entire picture, those recent strikes carried out overnight by the U.S. military in southern Iran. U.S. military officials saying the strikes were carried out in self-defense, targeting missile launch sites and boats they say were laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM says the strikes were aimed to protect troops from threats posed by Iranian forces. While traveling back from India today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said talks were still ongoing and that there's been a lot of back and forth regarding specific language.
I think there's strong alignment and agreement on what a preliminary draft should look like. I think that, like anything with something like this, it's going to take a couple days to settle on, even down to the disagreements over a word, sentence. So we'll have to work through that. If there's going to be a deal, we're going to have to work through that. But this is, it's either going to be a good deal or there isn't going to be one.
Now, in Iran, government officials there say negotiations are still continuing, but are proving a little difficult. They accuse the U.S. of being inconsistent and full of contradictions in negotiations. Even among those who call Tehran home, residents there are growing a little frustrated by the process. Some fear the U.S. will go back on its commitments if a deal is signed. Others aren't sure if a long-term peace deal is even possible.
In my opinion, a temporary agreement is possible, but whether this temporary agreement will lead to a final agreement and result in peace is questionable. The officials must absolutely maintain the necessary vigilance and care.
Now, Marco Rubio acknowledged those talks that are going on in Qatar with Qatari officials and Iranian officials, but at the moment, no major breakthroughs in this peace deal to report just yet. Dana?
All right, Jeff Paul, thank you for setting us up for this board hit by Bill.
The straits have to be open. They're going to be open one way or the other. So they need to be open. What's happening there is unlawful. It's illegal. It's unsustainable for the world. It's unacceptable. That cannot happen. The straits need to be open, unimpeded, without tolls. And obviously that needs to happen immediately.
So what he's talking about there with Marco Rubio traveling over the weekend right here is this choke point in the Strait of Hormuz. It has been a major sense of tension, not just for the region, but literally for the world thus far. So here's what happened over the weekend. All right, and just recently, as of like 2 days ago, Iran says they want the jurisdiction, and they'll split it with Oman if Oman agrees to it, but the Iranians want to control it. So this is the asserted oversight area, okay? Everything you see here in pink, this is a large area, okay? Previously, the Iranians really just claimed that northern section of the strait where you see a few islands on the Iranian side of the body of water. But they want all this now. They want to control it. And so that's going to be a major source of discussion. Now, with regard to the military action from over the weekend, here's what happened. The United States military noticed that there were 2 IRGC boats that were laying mines in the water. Those 2 boats were taken out. In response, the Iranians fired surface-to-air missiles. They say they went after an F-35. Whether that's true or not, we do not know. But then the U.S. military went after those targets. And again, those targets were on this side of the water in the town of Bandar Abbas. What about the mining in the Strait? It's a big concern, not just for the U.S., but all shipping companies and countries around the world. Check out this video here. There were several different mines the Iranians can use. And if you look at it, you could have these mines that are moored to the bottom of the ocean. You can find those, Dana, because you can go in and detect those. Other mines float on the water. Eventually, you could locate those. Then you've got other mines that detect when a ship passes over it, it emits a signal, and then it can tell when the mine is in the area. And these mines here, they can literally attach the side of a boat. So as you're cruising through, it can detonate later, and you never even know it.
Right.
So that's the situation with the Iranians. And be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch.
All right. Just a little something to give you an idea, brothers and sisters. There won't be any peace. This thing is about to collapse. And this war is about to be right back. And like I explained, we know the winning party, which is the God, Master Prophet Muhammad, and his angels, Iran and Syria. They're going to defeat the dragon and his angels. They're going to defeat the House of Assad. American Britain will be defeated and kicked out of the Middle East. False Israels will be under siege and waiting for their destruction, which isn't supposed to happen because that's an abomination, right? Because they claim to be God's chosen people, which the world is structured around that idea. So that's everybody's mind, which is going to collapse their minds once that event takes place. Like I said, that's an abomination. It said when God placed them in their land, they're not to be uprooted or removed. So it means if that happens, then who the hell were they? Well, it tells you exactly who they are. It tells you that they're Satan. This is in Revelation chapters 2 and 3, verse 9, both chapters. It says, I am giving out the synagogue of Satan, of the ones saying themselves Jews to be, and not they are, but they are lying. And the blasphemy, which is lie, out of the ones saying Jews to be themselves, and not they are, but synagogue of the Satan. So it's telling you exactly who they are. The ones who have synagogues, they're Satan. The ones that claim to be Jews, they're Satan. They claim to be from the tribe of Judah, which the word Jew is a term that they use, which is slang for Judah. But they don't call themselves Judah. They call themselves Jews. You see? So it's clear. They pretend to be original because original people are from the tribe of Judah. The messenger of the covenant from the tribe of Judah. The Lamb of God, which is the messenger of the covenant, which is Joshua the Messiah. And they're against him. You see? And they're against his people, which the world is going to find out exactly who they are once this event takes place. You see? So, like I explained, brothers and sisters, we know what's happening. We know what's going on. And when America loses this war and they're kicked out of the Middle East, this is going to affect them tremendously. It's going to affect them immediately. They're going to be cut from the oil. They will no longer have access to oil in the Middle East, which will lead to a change in events in the energy crisis here in America, with people with job loss and income instability, businesses shutting down and cutting workers, gig and side hustles drying up, unemployment rising with no insured idea if they're going to get paid out from unemployment, banking and money issues, inflation, rising prices and shortages, groceries, gas, rent, all that goes up, the supply chain slow down, empty shelves, and housing problems, rent increase, eviction rise, foreclosure increase, homelessness goes up, increase of crime and social tension. There's going to be a lot of theft and scam protesting. unrest, communities under stress, no 911s, government, all these things are going to be under stress. So they're going to cut programs due to lack of funds. The government is going to try to step in, stabilize things, but it's not going to be enough to pull through. The global is going to be global effects, trade slow down, travel become more expensive, and things of that nature. So spending is going to be, people are going to be trying to do whatever they can, you know. Before you know it, that's just the beginning, like I explained. But there's going to be a total economic collapse when things, once everything's out of stock, things never resume, because they're going to be cut completely from the oil, brothers and sisters. So that means it's going to be a famine here. No food, no oil, no water, no gas, no oil, no electricity, no electronics, no nothing, no getting around, no barbecues, no kickbacks, no concerts, no parties, no nothing, no getting on the internet, no social media, none of this crap that's going on. Ain't no more of what you think. It's going to be a total economic collapse, severe social unrest, people literally freezing to death, not having energy for heating in the dead of winter. Things are going to get real in a minute. So that's what I was saying earlier. Life as you know it is going to change dramatically, drastically. Things that you're used to will no longer be the norm. Things are not going to be like they used to be. Your life is going to change in a blink of an eye. In America, it's going down. It's on fire. It's about to be burnt down. That means anything you invest in it, including yourself, is going to be burnt up with it. And that's why we tell our brothers and sisters to invest in yourself. Invest in your own vision, which is the Abraham covenant. This is our vision, brothers and sisters. Complete separation. Says you'll be a fool to stay here in the land of your imprisonment. Said the people out of vision will perish. So they make sure you don't have it. But it's right here, brothers and sisters. This is your vision. This is what they're keeping from you. So you perish. But that's why we're here to reflect the light and give you the information to be successful. Here it is. This is our reward for the 400 years of hell, of servitude and affliction. It says, in that day, God made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Now, between those two coordinates is Arabia. Great Arabia, brothers and sisters, which is indicating that we're leaving. It even tells you here in the vision of horror, which what we went through, which we fit the description, and the only ones who fit the description, which false Israel do not. They're sitting in the wrong land. First of all, God said, give them Arabia. They're sitting in Palestine. Then it said you be sojourners, temporary, in the land that's not yours. You see? Well, it also says that you'll be in a strange land, foreign land, right? That's not yours. And Israel claimed to be, false Israel, they claim they had been the Israels from Egypt, right? That left. Okay, so if they left from Egypt and went to Israel, that's not foreign. That's not strange. That's next door. You see? And it said that they also never been to bondage. They never was in bondage to any man. You see? So they claim So they never was slaves, right? And they also said, and also they never went to 400 years of nothing. It was like the Holocaust was 10 years or less. I mean, it was less than 10 years. You see? And these things, and what happened to them was due to them because they were traitors. You see? So at the end of the day, brothers, sisters, they don't fit any of these descriptions, but we do. And it's telling you that we're getting out of here. It's telling you right here. It says that, it says, and when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and shall afflict them for 400 years. 16:19, 20:19. And also that nation whom they serve will I judge. 2020. The plague came in right on time. And they were affected. They were dropping like flies. Said pass over those with the lamb's blood, right? It passed right over us. But it didn't pass over them. It was an indication that they were in trouble. And it says afterwards, they shall come out. Afterwards shall they come out with great substance. See, coming out. And said, but thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. And in the fourth generation, they shall come hither. Come here again. For the iniquity of the Amorite, excuse me, because this is Amorite is not yet full. It says we will come here again. It's talking about this right here. Letting you know that we're leaving America, brothers and sisters. So that's where your mind needs to be. Getting prepared to leave America. Get the hell out of here. Not taking any reparations, any 6 states, taking any 40 acres and a mule, taking any plea deals. He said what God has for you is better. So you have to get prepared to make the transition. You got to get rid of this devil mind and upload your God mind. Get this information at this time to be successful. The Injil, the unsealed scripture, the information to be successful during this time, and get the information needed to be successful with the 5 mathematical pillars of Islam, which is your power and your protection. Give you the ability to be back in control, gain your power and your protection. And we're going to come together, brothers and sisters. And that's what we need. We need each other to get out of here. We got to work together in harmonic motion. Hodge, working together. No conflict, no interferences, no confusion. Everybody on the same page. It's fine. We have different perspectives. As long as it all equals to 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 3 plus 1 equals 4. 4 plus 0 equals 4. 2 times 2 equals 4. We good with these things. We fine with different perspectives as long as we get the same answer. That's what's important, brothers and sisters. So we must work together to get out of here. It's going to be a trial for us. You know, this thing, we're going to blow right. This fire is meant to purify us, not to burn us up. So this is just a makeup test. We're going to get out of here. You see, but this tribulation, our enemies are going to be burnt up, and America's going to be burnt up as well. Well, America's right. They're going to be in it. There's no escape for them. You see? So, brothers and sisters, we got to be 100% to go home. So you can't go home in the condition you're in because you bring hell with you. So that's the whole point of you being 100%. So you got to go through this testing. And we're going to get through this thing, brothers and sisters. Just hold on. All right. Let's take a look at what's going on over there.
The finger of the United States military is on the trigger behind the negotiations. The United States military attacked targets in southern Iran and in the Persian Gulf in strikes that were defined as self-defense. In Iran, they confirmed that soldiers of the Revolutionary Guards were eliminated in these strikes. Mustafa Khamenei is threatening from the bunker, saying that Israel is approaching the end of its existence. The deal with Iran is stuck on 2 issues. The nuclear issue and the money are once again the center of this crisis. Mustafa Khamenei added in a letter that the calls of death to America and death to Israel will unite the Muslim world. The United States is insisting on the destruction of the enriched uranium. Trump said clearly that this is a necessary condition for an agreement with Iran. And Trump, in an official demand to Arab leaders, leaves them with no choice. You are going to sign the Abraham Accords in exchange for a deal with Iran. And he made it clear, either there will be an excellent deal or we will return to the battlefield with force. The president of Iran announced the restoration of the internet in the country. It will be interesting to see what comes out of Iran and whether the testimonies will come out about what the regime did to the Iranian people. So, did Iran quietly prepare an unexpected surprise for the United States and Israel? Or have the United States and Israel already prepared the winning move against the Revolutionary Guards? Let me know in the comments, what do you think? I'm Yair Pinto, with me is Mati Shoshani, and we are boots on the ground, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening here in Israel and also the whole truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And today is May 26th, and we are about to bring you the whole information from this region. And 2 weeks before the opening of the World Cup, the soccer tournament in the United States, Iran is sending a new threat and connecting the war and the negotiations to the football games. Any miscalculation could turn Trump into a symbol of a bitter and costly mistake, according to the Revolutionary Guards. While the negotiations between the United States and Iran continue, the Iranians tried last night to raise the price of the game in the Strait of Hormuz. After American mine-clearing ships were already operating in the area to clear naval mines that had been placed earlier, according to reports, Iranian boats went out to place more mines. The Americans responded immediately and sank those boats. United States Central Command defined the action as self-defense. But the Iranians did not stop there. Missiles were launched towards the American aircrafts that are operating in the area, and that led to another wave of U.S. strikes in southern Iran. The strikes hit the area of Bandar Abbas, which is a central port and an important base of the Iranian Navy. According to reports, amongst the targets that were attacked were missile launch sites and boats that tried to place the mines. In Iran, 4 deaths were reported. And all of this is happening while about 20 American warships, including 2 aircraft carriers and the vessels accompanying them, are operating in the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea in order to enforce the blockade on Iran's ports. And in the middle of this escalation, United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that talks were held in Qatar, but the wording of the deal could take a few more days. Then he sent a clear message to Tehran. The Strait of Hormuz must remain open, and it will remain open one way or another. And at the same time, Trump is hardening his position. He's no longer talking only about a ceasefire or opening the strait, but about a much broader deal. The destruction of Iran's enriched uranium or its transfer to the United States, supervision by the Atomic Energy Agency, and stopping the transfer of weapons to the terrorist organization Hezbollah, and also giving Israel freedom of action against Hezbollah in the event of a threat, and maybe also a regional move that will include normalization of the relations between Israel and additional Arab and Muslim countries. And meanwhile in Tehran, they're trying to turn Hormuz into a pressure card. The regime announced that it will collect payment from vessels under the title of Navigation and Maritime Protection Services. The Gulf states, they are warning that markets are nervous. And the message is clear. The negotiations may still be continuing, but the war over the strait is already taking place in practice. After the United States announced that it had attacked targets in Iran for the purpose of self-defense, the Revolutionary Guards announced that they had shut down an American UAV that entered Iranian airspace and fired towards a fighter jet. Look, Last night, President Trump again posted on his social network Truth that the enriched uranium must leave Iran. The president wrote, "The enriched uranium will be transferred immediately to the United States so it can be brought home and destroyed, or preferably, with cooperation and coordination from the Islamic Republic of Iran, destroyed on site or in another acceptable location with the Atomic Energy Commission, or its equivalent, witnessing this process and making sure that the uranium was destroyed." On the other hand, the Iranians made it clear that they oppose removing the uranium at this stage. And not long ago, a letter arrived from Iran's supreme leader by courier, Mujtaba Khamenei, in a written message. Yes, I think it is really easy to make threats when you are sitting alone in a bunker underground and cannot leave the room. All you have left is to threat. So the supreme leader of Iran, Mujtaba Khamenei, published a written message this morning in which he threatened that the hands of time will not go backwards, and that the people and countries of this region will no longer serve as a shield for American bases. In the message, which was published against the backdrop of the growing tension between Tehran and Washington, Khamenei added that America, in addition to no longer having any safe place for evil, for acts of aggression, and for placing military bases in this region, is moving further and further away every day from its former status. And what about the agreement? Look, in the message that Khamenei published in honor of the pilgrimage to Mecca, the Muslim holiday, he attacked Israel, and he also attacked the United States. He wrote that the weak Zionist regime and the cancerous tumor of Israel have approached the final stages of their cursed lives. Iran continues to claim that it will not move forward in negotiations with the United States without the release of the frozen Iranian funds in Qatar. The dispute around the issue is in the process of being resolved through Qatari mediation. But in Iran, they're still concerned about previous American violations. At the same time, it was reported that Iran is demanding the immediate release of $12 billion with the signing of a memorandum of understanding, and the remainder within 60 days. And look, in the 12 weeks that have passed since the United States and Israel opened their military campaign against Iran, in which the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and many senior officials were killed, Tehran has constantly insisted that any agreement must focus on ending the conflict on all fronts. This includes Lebanon, where Iran-backed Hezbollah forces clashed with Israelis almost immediately after the fighting broke out. And the war against Hezbollah is moving up a gear. Israel received American support to intensify its actions against the terror organization. The IDF struck more than 100 Hezbollah targets. An unusual evacuation warning was delivered to the residents of the Lebanese city. The IDF opened a broad wave of strikes in the Bekaa Valley and in the south of the country, during which more than 100 terror targets were attacked. And Trump is raising the price, not only an agreement with Iran, but a new Middle East. While the negotiations with Tehran move forward, the President of the United States is placing a demand on the Arab and Muslim countries that pressured him to advance the agreement. If you want to deal with Iran, you must also join the Abraham Accords. Trump mentioned Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Pakistan by name and called on them to begin immediately signing a normalization agreement with Israel. According to him, additional countries need to follow them. And he even hinted that Iran itself could one day join the move. In simple words, Trump is trying to turn the agreement with Iran into a massive regional deal, opening Hormuz, stopping the escalation, and also a dramatic expansion of the Abraham Accords. The question now is whether Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Pakistan will really enter a historic move with Israel, or whether Trump has simply placed a new price on the table for them. You want stability against Iran? sign a peace agreement with Israel. And a shock is taking place in Britain. A wave of departure is sweeping the kingdom because of Muslim immigrants. The wave of British Jews leaving for Israel could turn into a flood. The kingdom is failing to protect the basic freedoms of its Jewish citizens, and we will bring you all the details soon. I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani, and we are boots on the ground, bringing you the whole truth about what is happening in Israel and the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And 1 second before we begin, I want to call on you to continue spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button. And most importantly, do not forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and Mati Shoshani on our social media platforms so you can get a look through our eyes at what it is like to live in Israel under this war. Our senior Middle East correspondent, Mati Shoshani. After the Americans sank the Iranian boats and struck in southern Iran, are we still inside a ceasefire, or have we already entered the war that is taking place without anyone admitting it?
This is absolutely no marketing gimmick. This is a one-time emergency clearance deal you'll never find again. A top-tier major American wholesale supplier suddenly shut down and stopped supply, leaving a whole batch of high-end, best-selling cowboy pilot watches piled up directly in our warehouse. These watches were originally supplied only to luxury top-tier hotels in...
Look, this is a complicated question. Trump both is a creative negotiator, but also a very strong believer in the idea of the Abraham Accords and the next phase of the Abraham Accords. I want to explain this. It takes a couple years back in history to really understand what's happening right now. Before October 7th, 2023, the big item on the geopolitical map in Israel and in the Middle East was what? Was the idea of Saudi Arabia joining in to the Abraham Accords. That was what was on the table. In fact, there are rumors that say that one of the triggers for the Hamas attack was to stop the attempts to bring in Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords. Why is this important? Trump has a vision for the Middle East that is more than just an idea of let's have a ceasefire, let's have a non-war situation. We're not actively or legally at war with most of the countries of the Gulf, or just don't have normalized relationships with them. His idea is a financial prosperity idea. His idea is a trade prosperity idea. The idea behind all of this is something that runs more into the business line of thought and the cooperation line of thought than a purely just non-war situation. And that's why his statements here that have to do with the Saudis or the Qataris about the Abraham Accords, I mean, they should be seen through two prisms. One is, of course, the fact that he's been calling on many countries, both Gulf states and, of course, the states that are in this case, of course, in Europe that were not involved in this war. He's been repeatedly calling on them, be part of the war, be part of fighting against Iran, be part of the solution against the evil regime that is the Iranian regime. That's not a new message from President Trump. It's a repeated message. But also the Abraham Accords message is a reoccurring message. The Trump administration in its previous time around was very active in building new relationships in the Middle East and being a bridge builder between the people of the Arab world and Israel and the United States' interest in this part of the world. And I need to say this as part of a bigger picture that is fighting against Chinese agenda, fighting against Chinese presence, fighting against Russian stakes and stakeholds in this part of the world. And when he did that, he did it beautifully. He did it in an agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. He did it with Morocco, several other countries. And so this is something that's meaningful. The Trump administration truly, really does want to have an agreement and a second phase of the Abraham Accords. He truly does believe that countries both in NATO and in the Gulf need to also carry some of their own weight when it comes to the situation, when it comes to the war, when it comes to fighting against Iran. So his statement here should be taken at face value. He truly wants and is calling on these states to enter into the Abraham Accords. At the same time, he truly wants and expects them, and this is an important word, he expects them to carry some of the load in fighting against Iran, in sanctions, in cutting off trade, in putting up real military power, and investment as a percentage of the GDP in building up their own military capabilities. That is something that the Trump administration has been working on for a very long time, and they mean business when they say that they're expecting countries to be part of that. One last thing here. We keep saying on this channel that whatever happens next in the Middle East after the ceasefire is not going to be an outcome of just military power. You can't bomb your way into an agreement. You can't bomb your way into a ceasefire. What you can do is you can only carry out diplomatic and, let's call it, geopolitical steps, treaties, agreements, trade pacts between the different countries. And the Trump White House understands that and is working in that direction for the Gaza Strip, for Lebanon, for Syria at earnest, and now also for the countries around Iran. Financial treaties have always been part of their modus operandi. Building up deals is part of the way they operate. Signing treaties that are related also to finance and not just war and warfare have always been part of the way they operate, and this is no different. They're looking towards the day after. What happens after we have a deal? How do we build up trade? How do we build up business? How do we build up something that is financially worthwhile for the countries that are involved, and of course for U.S. interests in this part of the world? That's how Trump has operated in the past, before he was president, and that's also how he's operating this time around. And let me just say this, Yael, if this materializes, it'll be amazing. It'll be beautiful for Israel, for the Gulf states, for the Middle East. Building up a pact and a treaty of trade is something that will be absolutely essential and wonderful for these countries in the day after Iran, the day after the war ends, the day after the Strait of Hormuz opens up once more.
I've been a pastor for over 20 years. This is a very important message that I urge every American to pay close attention to, especially if you live anywhere near these cities. There is a terrifying biblical prophecy that is happening right in front of our eyes, yet no one is saying a thing about it. Matthew chapter 24, verses 7 through 8 says, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains." If you've been paying attention to recent events,
And Mati, is Trump's new demand to transfer the enriched uranium to the United States the real breaking point of the negotiations with Iran?
That's a complicated question, Yael. And let me really give the big picture here for a second. In the White House, President Trump and his team need to think more than just about the current conflict taking place with Iran. On the event horizon that is coming down their direction are future challenges with the Chinese, with other countries around the world, with the Russians, and with the question of what will be the U.S., let's call it empire's position in the world when this current war with Iran ends. And to answer that, you have to look at what Trump has been doing in recent weeks. He's been meeting with the Chinese government. Him and Xi Jinping just 2 weekends ago had a summit together in Beijing where they talked about financial cooperation. Trump has been calling on countries around the world to be part of rebuilding the economies of Gaza, Lebanon, of Syria, of other countries that have been in conflict. And this current conflict that's taking place in or in with Iran is tied into also the future events that are going to take place. Now, you mentioned, Yael, Pakistan and China. Two of them are a great example of how China and the United States wage war, how they carry out conflicts, how they build their agendas, their powers in the world. The US builds bases, the US puts soldiers, the US fights wars that stop terrorism, that stop dictators around the world. But China doesn't operate that way. China doesn't have bases outside of China at all, in fact. They use soft financial power to promote their agenda. And how does this connect to Pakistan? Well, in the same way that the Chinese have been lending money to African countries, to other Asian countries, to the Iranians to a certain degree, they know how to throw around their weight when it comes to finances. Pakistan is a very problematic economy. It is a country on the brink of bankruptcy and insolvency every other day of the week. And that's not an exaggeration. You can look up their macroeconomic statistics. And when you do, you realize how dependent they are on foreign aid and on other countries lending them money. Where do you see this come to play? In this last war, several countries have looked at Pakistan and said, what on earth is going on here? Why are you working together with the Iranians? And for instance, the UAE said, you know what? We're not happy with the fact that you're doing this. Let's take back some of the loans that we've previously given you. And immediately when they do that, other countries, the Chinese, the Saudis, several other entities, the Qataris, they look and say, oh, look, here's a weak country with a huge population that sits on a land bridge, Pakistan. Maybe we want to be the ones that own their debt. And then someone else gives them money. Why do I tell you this not really interesting story? Because the story of the Pakistani debt is tied into China. China works through debt. China works through commerce. They built up a financial dependency in other countries, and through that, they impact the world. Well, how does this connect to Iran? Great question. Let me tell you the answer to that. Iran depends on Chinese money. How so? Well, remember those famous sanctions? The Iranians famously were exporting a majority of their oil to China. They were doing that behind the back of the Chinese and by circumventing the sanctions imposed on them by the Americans and other countries. For Iran, that was about 80% of their revenue, 80 to 90% of their revenue related to oil. For China, just a fraction, 10 to 12% of the oil purchased by the Chinese government was related to this. Why is this interesting? Because it shows you how China is able to create strings of power and influence through purchases, through commerce, through trade with other countries. How does this relate to the situation in the Hormuz Strait right now? Well, to really end all of this, to end this conflict, there needs to be a bigger scheme, a bigger plan, a bigger strategy. And Trump famously pulled in the Chinese and said, look, be part of the solution. I'm going to help you with getting oil. That's already taken care of. But how about you be part of the solution for Iran for the day after? You've invested money in the Iranians, in building them up as an ally for you, a trade partner, etc. Why not you be part of that agreement? And think about it from this perspective. Who can influence Iran? Well, they have a lot of internal conflict, a lot of internal pressures. The US has an enormous amount of military pressure on them right now, and a lot of financial pressure on them in the sense of sanctions. But from a different direction, the Chinese government has an immense amount of pressure on them by the fact that they are one of the biggest contributors to the Iranian economy, especially when it relates to the IRGC and the money they make from selling oil. Combine all those things. When President Trump and Xi Jinping get cozy with each other and start talking about treaties between the US and China and putting down, the tariffs and reducing the, let's call it the financial warfare that's taking place between them, when you talk about that from that perspective and think about Iran being in the middle, well, now Pakistan and Iran are just pieces in a much bigger game that talks about what will happen between the two global financial superpowers in the years to come. That's, of course, the US and China. And from that perspective, now Pakistan makes sense. Now Iran makes sense. Now the Chinese involvement all makes sense. Trump has been, and I need to say this openly, has been in a masterful way working the economic aspect of this entire conflict in a way that is far more sophisticated than I believe most people, most outlets will agree to and will believe in. Why is that? Because they like to look at his behavior as a capricious behavior, as something that's sort of, it's on the fly kind of behavior. But when it comes to oil, when it comes to moving money, when it comes to markets, the moves made here by the US together with the Chinese, hopefully, and of course on the back of Iran and with the help of Pakistan, they all tie into money. They all tie into the economy. And again, what's the famous statement? It's about the economy, dummy. It's always about finances. It's always about money. It's always about the dollar bills that pay for the IRGC to keep fighting, that pay for the American war machine, that pay for the Chinese government and their economy. And if you can manipulate the way the economy works and build towards a global agreement where the US benefits, remains in power, and the Chinese have to work together with them, well, that's done at the expense of the Iranian regime in a way that weakens the Iranian regime and strengthens the agenda, the purposes, the goals of the American forces here in the region. And of course, from my perspective, from where I'm standing, that is good for.
This is the mosquito lamp my team spent 3 years building because every bug zapper on the market kept using the wrong technology. Every bug zapper.
Israel.
Mati, Why is Iran so pressured by the Israeli strikes in Beirut? And has Lebanon now become one of the keys to the agreement with Iran?
Yael, that's a great question. Are the Iranians in financial trouble and trying to milk the ships that are coming through for cash, or is this a power play? Well, what if I told you I think it's both? It is both at the same time. And why do I say that? Opening or closing the Strait of Hormuz is really sort of the key piece in the physical, the visual image of who's winning in the war. Now, even though the US beat the Iranians dramatically, substantially, in every possible military aspect of this war, the fact that the Ayatollah regime in Iran is still able to squeeze the ships coming through, to threaten the ships coming through the Strait of Hormuz, or trying to travel through the Strait of Hormuz, is a show of power, of sovereignty, and control for the Iranian Ayatollah regime. So when they talk about, we control the Strait of Hormuz, ships that travel through will pay us, Iran, to be able to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they do that because it's a show of power to the world, and it benefits their economy. And more than that, I think the Iranians, they understood how beautifully it works when you close the Strait of Hormuz. Now, again, there's the whole element where it backfired on them quite dramatically, and they too are bleeding from the Strait of Hormuz, financially, I should say, bleeding from the Strait of Hormuz being closed, but that doesn't matter to them. If they can say, we are the ones, we are the regime, we are the power that closed off the Strait of Hormuz, and no one in the world, including the United States, was able to force us to open it, which is true, by the way, well, that's a show of power for them. That's